We're about to go live.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. A warm welcome to those attending and to our viewers live on the Council YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Higgins and I'm the chairman of this meeting. Details of business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies which are accessible in the room and online under the live broadcast, and I always like doing that. So, for those present in the room and attending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. We're not expecting any fire drills, so if the alarm does go off, please follow our officers out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent before the meeting starts, or please note that councillors on the committee can use their laptops and tablets during the meeting to view the agenda paperwork. Before we moved on to the agenda, I'd like to introduce councillors present. I'd like to introduce Steve Tuckwell as my vice chairman. I'm a bit thrown because we haven't got any opposition here, so I'll just do our lot and then we go through there. So, Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Brightman, Councillor Alani, Councillor Kaufman, and unfortunately, not like Jazz not to attend, but he's not present, and I'm led to believe that we have apologies for absence, but we'll get onto that later. Also, officers on the table, the Director of Planning and Regulation, James Rogers. My planning lead team is Fiona, and the planning principal officers, Nisha Burnham. Transport is Alan Tilley. Legal advisor is Kerry Monroe, and Steve Clark, who makes this happen, our Democratic Service Officer. So we go to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence received from Councillor John Morse this evening, Chair.
Okay, any declarations of interest before the meeting? No. Do we agree the minutes of the last meeting? Good, thank you. Matters notified in advance are urgent. There is one, item 6, 18 St Edmunds Avenue has been withdrawn, and there's no reports in private, so it's all public tonight. So, I think that's it, and we will get straight on with item 7. And is that you, Fiona? Okay, off you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. There's just a clarification in there with regards to a rear window, which I'll point out on the drawings as we go along. There's no change to the recommendation or any need to tweak any conditions. It's just for information. Planning permission is sought at this property on Gidar House for fenestration changes and other minor works to the existing office building. Officers are recommending approval, but alongside some important conditions that are necessary to make the development acceptable. So just turning to the site on the screen, it's on a site on the eastern side of the Crossway. You can see the car park just to the north of the building, and the rear boundary is shared with the gardens on Hillingdon Hill. On the southern boundary, we see the retail properties, again on Hillingdon Hill, that have residential flats above. Turning to the constraints, importantly, this is part of the Hillingdon Village Conservation Area, and you can just see it in context there on the aerial image. Turning to the photos, I'm guessing that that's a sort of 1990s building that forms part of the conservation area, but with a neutral contribution being made. Just again, some more photos showing the side elevation and the other side elevation that faces to the north, so next to the car park. On the existing front elevation, we can see that there's a minor change proposed as I turn to the next slide, just to the front doors. At the rear, a new window is being inserted here, which is conditioned to be obscure glazed and fixed shut. And that's the window referenced in the addendum report that we've said serves a staircase, but it's actually a WC and a small meter room. The existing side elevation facing the properties on Hillingdon Hill is just here, and they're proposing to increase the size of the windows there. Now, I'll touch on the relationship when we move to the photos, but if you note that the first floor windows are to be obscure glazed at a height above ground level. Turning to the other side elevation facing the car park, a similar arrangement with new windows being inserted and made larger. The existing site plan, you can see that car park to the north, and minor changes in internally and externally. The ground floor, first floor, and no changes at second floor or roof level. So I think the photos are particularly helpful because you can see the relationship to the property on the Crossway next door and that existing boundary treatment on the side. The report explains that we think the ground floor windows can be clear glazed because they directly face onto that fencing and that side wall. But the first floor is a touch more uncomfortable with that relationship with the neighbour as it could look across the garden. So that's why we believe that the windows need to be obscure glazed. You can just see a view from looking from Hillingdon Hill, a view again towards the Crossway, and back to the south. And this is the relationship to the properties on the rear of Hillingdon Hill. And you can see that's a really close relationship. Again, we need the obscure glazing to ensure there's no direct overlooking. There is an issue there that members should be mindful of when making the decision that increasing the size of the windows will increase the perception of overlooking because the windows will be larger. However, the floor levels of the two buildings do differ. So as you stand in the back rooms of those residential units, you at the moment see a window, and you will continue to see a window, a different size, but you don't appreciate that those are high level as you stand in that room. That's our assessment of the case. So with obscure glazing, we believe that relationship is acceptable. And that concludes my presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. It was very well done. We go to petitioners first. Eva Shah-Wall. Not present? No. So that saves us 5 minutes. Now, the applicant is Joshua Jackson.
Written statement.
A written statement.
Yep.
So if we could have that. Thank you.
Okay. So these written comments are being submitted to the committee because unfortunately neither the applicant nor his planning consultant can attend the meeting in person. The proposals are for minor alterations to the front door, windows and other openings in an existing modern office block. Residents have raised the following concerns which have been fully addressed as described by the officers in their reports. Loss of privacy / overlooking from side and rear windows. The applicants have agreed that the first floor windows to each side elevation to the building will be installed with obscure glazing up to a height of 1.8 metres above internal floor level to preclude any overlooking or loss of privacy to neighbouring properties. As the officers' report notes, this would provide the benefit and additional natural light to the offices as well as some sky view higher up to the window without any harmful effect on neighbours. The only additional window to the rear elevation would be to toilets on the ground floor, not to the stairs as stated in the officer's report, and these would be obscure glazed in any event. All other windows are existing and do not change. Rear windows could preclude the development's potential of neighbouring sites. As stated above, the only new rear window would be to serve ground floor toilets, and these would be obscure glazed, so would not prejudice the development potential of neighbouring land. Concerns with proposed loss of parking resulting from the garage doors being replaced. There are garage doors opening to the north side elevation. However, internally there are no garage spaces. Instead, the existing ground floor provides offices and associated storage space. From internal inspection, it does not appear that this ground floor space has been used as garaging for possibly more than 20 years. Thus, the proposal does not involve any actual loss of parking spaces compared to the existing situation. Concerns about impact on the character and appearance of the building and the area. The current modern office block was constructed in 1986. The officer's report notes that all of the proposed work is relatively cosmetic, affecting only windows and fittings within the existing building envelope. The council's conservation officer concludes the proposed changes to the windows would have no impact on the conservation area. The Conservation Area Advisory Committee has not commented on the application. The officer's report notes that the removal of the signage and the relocation of the single entrance door would remove clutter from the front elevation, and this is considered beneficial to the conservation area and weighs in favour of the proposals. In summary, the proposals involve minor works to windows and other openings which would improve the natural light and quality of the office accommodation without harm to neighbouring amenity or the character and appearance of the conservation area. The proposals would therefore comply with relevant national and local policies, and we ask that members confirm the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well read. Okay, I'll open straight to the floor. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for an interesting presentation. I mean, this building is interesting to look at, given that it's in a conservation area, and that made me sort of like really sort of scrutinise the officer's comments, because it is in such a well-to-do conservation area of that needs to be addressed. But I think the officers have also done a great job in terms of conditioning as far as they possibly can. It's heavily conditioned, particularly around the obscured windows. So the overlooking has been mitigated. Try as I might to look through the petitioner's comments and the like, I can't really see any grounds for refusal that would stick at appeal. And I think if the petitioners are watching now, then if it goes to appeal, then there is a risk that some of those conditions could be diluted. There's always that risk. So I can't see there's any grounds for refusing this. It's a minor change. The overlooking has been mitigated, and I think on that basis we've got no choice but to move up. Well, I'd like to move officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Councillor Brightman.
On the basis of what Councillor Tuckwell just said, I'll second officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. The nicest thing about that building was the car that was parked in front of it, but that's another view, and that's my view only. The only thing I've got is, can officers tell me about the openings of those windows? Obviously they're obscure glaze, but obviously we need to make sure that they're not restricted, I don't know what you'd say, but...
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If we just look, they're just fixed windows. They're not casements, they don't open, it's just to allow for natural light. So there's not even fan light openings on them.
Okay, lovely. Just wanted to double check on that. Thank you very much. So I'll go straight for a show of hands. Those who approve with officer's recommendation, please show. So that's unanimous, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we go to the next one, is item 8, 70A Bridge Road. And Fiona, you're doing this one as well.
Yes, thank you again, Chairman. So planning permission is sought on this site for the conversion of the existing commercial unit to 3 residential flats, with minor external alterations proposed as well. Officers are recommending refusal for this application for the reasons identified in the report, but just as a quick summary, to do with the internal layout and the close proximity that results in a loss of privacy to near neighbours, concerns about the quality of the new development, and due to an over-provision of parking on the site, and also, conversely, which I will explain, the lack of a legal agreement to assure the local residents that they won't be eligible for parking permits, the new occupiers. So just turning to the site location plan, the works, you can see it's called the works, identified to the rear of that of that plan. And on the constraints plan, we can see that it's in a parking management zone. The existing block plan just identifies the building at the back of the site. And the existing floor plans show that layout for existing sort of industrial use explained in the report. This is the existing building, and it's under construction at the moment to look like this, and I'll show you the photos shortly. Importantly, I'd just draw your attention to that there is no window in this location, which is sort of the closest point to the near residential neighbours. So there's the existing site plan as laid out, and the proposed site plan. So in terms of built form and bulk, that remains the same. So this is the layout of the new proposal. We've got the 5 car parking spaces in an undercroft here. You'll note that parking is quite a key issue. Firstly, for residents who are concerned about the lack of parking provision, possibly due to the existing controlled parking zone and the fact that it can be difficult to get a space on the street. And that brings 2 issues for us. Firstly, that we don't want an over-provision of parking, and we would expect to see a maximum of 3 units as a result of 3 units 3 spaces as a result of 3 units being created, but also we should have a legal agreement in place to stop the future occupiers of this unit from getting those parking permits and causing a problem by virtue of, overloading that zone. The layout, you can see the flats on there, and I'll draw your attention to the one at roof level. It's quite difficult to see, but this flat is slightly too small in terms of space standards for a 2-bed and 4-person unit, and there's no clear sections that show us that it's got enough head height within this space. Also, most of the floor space is served by roof lights or obscure glazed windows, and that is a concern to us. None of the flats have external amenity space, which is another important factor. So these are the proposed elevations. It's the introduction of this new window that really does cause some concern, given the proximity to those properties at the rear. So I just draw your attention to that. The other windows on the side here facing onto neighbouring gardens would be obscure glaze, so in terms of overlooking could be acceptable. And just again turning to the bird's eye view so you can see that in context and the close proximity to neighbours. This is the kind of access down into the back of the site, and that's sort of going through that access to look to the building at the rear that's currently in the midst of being redeveloped or reformed. That's a view looking out to the neighbours. There is an existing opening sort of allowed to be permitted in this location, but no existing window in this location permitted, which is closer to those near neighbours. These are some views over to the rear gardens. Those windows would actually be obscure glaze, but it provides context. And that's the view to the rear of the site, so where we say that it would be acceptable to have windows because there's much greater distance to the people behind. And that's a full-on view of the site as it is at the moment, and that back wall where a new window is being proposed that we're concerned about. This is the back of the neighbouring dwellings, just to, again, provide some context. And that concludes my presentation, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. Very good. Well done. We've got a written petition over you to you, Steve. Daniel Crowley.
So this is a written statement from the lead petitioner for this item, Daniel Crowley. I think that diagram, yeah, thanks, Fiona. Previous applications had a schedule of conditions, notably 3 and 4. Item 3 states no additional windows to the dwelling facing 73 through 77 Bridge Road. The reason for this was to comply with policy BE24 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2, saved UDP policies. The new application totally ignores this and in fact has 53 windows when the previous plans had 41. This is an increase of 12 and disregards BE24. When referencing the diagram, neighbouring amenity, the proposed development must demonstrate that the site would be capable of accommodating the new flat without adversely affecting the amenities of surrounding properties. A separation distance in excess of 21 metres between habitable rooms and 15 metres to flank walls is required for new residential units. Habitable rooms should also not overlook the private gardens of neighbouring houses. Image 4, the diagram, shows that overlooking issues will occur from the lounge windows of flats A and B on this first floor. As can be seen, the proposed flats will clearly breach the 21-metre overlooking distances to the rear habitable rooms of numbers 72 through 78 Bridge Road. They will also directly overlook the rear gardens of these houses, resulting in a loss of privacy to the residents, contrary to council policy. Considering the previous uses of the site, there is potential for contamination on site. A contamination report should have been submitted as part of this planning application. Highway safety is also of a major concern, with 9 people and potentially 9 cars going in and out of a space that holds 5 cars via a small throughway directly linked to our front garden is unsafe. There is no way of vehicles coming out of the small throughway to see sideways traffic or pedestrians. This could cause major, if not fatal, injury. Invasion of privacy, as 5 windows on the elevation side and 2 on the front will directly look into our garden and also see through to our bedroom. This is like building a house at the end of a garden, which is not acceptable. Our 2-year-old daughter plays in the garden, and we would see it as a breach of hers and our privacy, having residents who will have unlimited visual access to our property. This amounts to common law nuisance and is an interference with quiet enjoyment of land due to the fact that the dwelling will now be occupied full-time rather than in business hours. In order to ensure a high standard of public amenity and to meet objectives of inclusion and accessibility, the Council will ensure that car parking areas have bays of appropriate dimensions and with sufficient manoeuvring space, are well lit, safe and secure, and landscaped to a high standard, with provision for electric vehicle parking. The ground floor car park does not comply with the minimum dimensions for car park spaces and manoeuvring space as shown in image 3. The manoeuvring dimension is only 5.125 metres, as stated on the ground floor plan, rather than the required 6 metres shown in image 3. This will make manoeuvring in and out of the spaces extremely difficult, in particular the spaces located at the front and rear of the car park. This inability to use the car park spaces will result in the need for tenants to park on the road instead. Section 9 of the planning asks if this supersedes any existing consents. The document states no. However, in 2018, planning was granted for a roof extension and roof lights and dormer windows. This has not been completed, and currently the site is freely accessible from the road with works incomplete. There is direct access from the road through the dwelling and into our garden/property. Therefore, previous planning is incomplete, and this, I would imagine, does in fact supersede the previous planning application. Point 19 of the application asks if the proposals are within 20 metres of a watercourse, and the answer given was no. However, there is a river directly behind the property within 1.5 metres. Planning states it is a conversion of an existing commercial B1 premises into a residential premises for C use. However, it is a change from B2 industrial unit to C3 dwelling. So this is incorrect. That's the end of the statement.
Thank you very much, Steve. We have the applicant, John McDade. Is he present? Would you like to speak, sir, or you have 5 minutes if you wish to? If you just come to the table.
Table up here, yeah.
What will happen, sir, is that we have a traffic light system. When you start speaking, the green will give you 4 minutes. The amber will come on, that means you've got 1 minute, and red means I will stop you after 5 minutes. So that's fine, but I have to state that so you know. Take a seat, please, and press the red button when you're ready. Or the button that will turn red once you turn.
Yeah, I'm the owner of the building. We came in before for 5 units, and they told us to cut it back to 3 units would be acceptable. The windows looking right and left is existing windows that was in the building. The roof, there's windows in the roof, but any windows that's downstairs or the middle floor was all existing. That's all really I have to say. I haven't much to say about it.
Thank you very much. A short tweet. Does any councillors want to have a question? You might as well. You can go back to your seat now. Thank you very much. Right. So I'll open it straight to the floor. Leave it. It won't. It'll be fine. You can hear me anyway, so that's the main thing. You don't have to worry. Anyway. Yeah. So before I'm going to open it to the floor, officers are going to come back with some points that I was whispering in their ears. So we're just.
Yeah. So it's just that there's a point raised by the petitioner regarding the layout of the parking area and the practicalities of it. I note that in terms of the plan, the distance between the front of the parking spaces and the end wall is 5.125 metres. Normally there's 6 metres in a car park layout between parking spaces to enable enough manoeuvring space for, put simply, vehicles to manoeuvre without hitting another object, which in this case would be the wall. So what I was going to suggest is that I totally support the first 3 lines of reason number 1, that there's an excessive amount of parking, but what we don't want is the applicant to come back with less parking in a layout that doesn't actually work. So I will ask Alan to confirm he's in agreement with my thoughts, but my thoughts will be to add an extra line to reason 1 to the effect that it raises concerns regarding the parking layout and whether it is satisfactory.
Over to you, Alan. Obviously, there is the answer is that you only can have smart cars in it, but I don't think we can, that's not a planning regulation we can put in.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, James. Yes, I can confirm that the distance between 2 rows of car parking or 1 row of car parking and a wall should be 6 metres. So that can be added as James has suggested. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so that's that one.
So you'll delegate.
I'll delegate that to you, James, yes, because I don't intend to do it, honestly. I'll let you do it. Steve, Mr. Councillor Tuckwell, sorry, I get too formal, and then Alan.
Okay.
After Councillor.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I can see the difficulty because you've got an existing building which essentially is in the rear of these properties that at some point we need to have something done to it. But for me, this is just too much. There's too much. It's too close. There's too much overlooking. And I can see that it's quite heavily conditioned. But my question to officers is, do we need to add another condition or add a line to one of the existing conditions which actually deals with the overlooking issue? Because it's mentioned a couple of times in the report, but I see the conditions, unless someone can point it out to me, talks about amenity space, insufficient internal space, lack of an agreement and parking. But, you know, it is contrary to our overlooking policies. Is there something we can add?
One of you fine people just answer that question for me. Is it Fiona or is it James?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to answer it. I think we can, based on the new rear window. So I think we've come to the same conclusion as you, that there's an existing building, there's an existing relationship, but it is really uncomfortable. I think a residential use, in my office opinion, could work here, but it needs to be sort of facing out to the back where it's less sensitive rather than here. So I think we could add a reason for refusal on that point.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. Anything else to do?
No, just on that basis, I mean, I think it's, again, as I'll say, it's too much for the site that's there, and I'd be happy to move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. So you're proposing, that's great. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman. It's always interesting when you come second to speak, because the points that I'd sort of looked at was the substandard level of accommodation for future occupiers for flats A and C, and the lack of amenity space for all flats. So on that basis, and on what Councillor Tuckwell has said, I would be happy to second that proposal.
Thank you very much. Shall I have a seconder? I know the applicant's in the audience. If you listen to what we're trying to say, we can see that there's going to be something there. We do understand what you're doing, but if you just take the points that have been sort of discussed on the table, that might help you, and obviously take some advice from the planning team if you wish. On that note, can I have a show of hands for those in favour? That's unanimous. It's a bit odd that it's only just that side. I'm not looking at that side as well now. So anyway, so we've agreed with observation for refusal with those slight minor changes. Okay. So we go now to item number 9, which is Neyland Court. Nisha.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, item 9, Neyland Court. There is a lot of detail relating to this planning application, so please bear with me as I cover the key points during my presentation. This application seeks planning permission to erect a 2-storey building that would accommodate a management office at first floor level and 4 replacement car parking spaces in the undercroft at ground floor level. Also, the proposed site plan shows changes to the existing site layout, including new replacement boundary treatment and the new relocation of the refuse store. These proposed changes will be discussed during the presentation. Here is the site location plan. The site is located to the north of Pembroke Road. Bird's eye view of the site. The constraints plan shows that the site falls adjacent to 2 heritage sites, the Ruislip Village Conservation Area, highlighted in orange, and Midcroft Ruislip Area of Special Local Character, highlighted in purple. I'm just going to take you to the proposed block plan. Members should note that this application is a resubmission following a dismissed appeal in respect to a similar application under reference number ending in 2021-1569. Although this previous appeal was lodged on non-determination grounds, the putative reason for refusal was presented to members at the Miners Planning Committee meeting held on the 1st of September 2021. The ground for refusal related to the significant harm to the residential amenity of the surrounding neighbours, specifically the flats at Neyland Court, number 19 Pembroke Road, and number 6A and 8 Brick Wall. Just to let you know that the numbers on the proposed block plan are not correct when I show you the proposed site plan, so just bear that in mind, and the discrepancies are highlighted within the committee report. So the previous scheme for the proposed erection of an office management building was along this boundary where the existing garages are. And under this current application, they're now proposing the 2-storey office building along the rear boundary. So this is the proposed elevation of the office management building. It would have a ridge height of 5.6 metres. Ground floor plan shows the replacement car parking spaces and the office space at first floor level. So this is the location of where the proposed office management building would be located. At the moment, there's an unauthorised carport that was recently constructed at the site, and that structure is currently being investigated by the Council's Enforcement Department. I'm just going to talk you through a bit more about the changes they're proposing to the actual site layout. So the proposed site plan shows that the existing boundary wall, which currently screens Neyland Court's communal garden from the adjoining car park, would be demolished, and that's highlighted by the orange line that you can see. So that's where the existing wall is. I will be showing you photos of that wall towards the end of the presentation. So that's going to be demolished and replaced by a new boundary wall in the form of a brick wall, block piers and metal railings. So if you look to the right hand side of the slide, you'll see an image of what the proposed boundary treatment would look like. This proposed new boundary treatment would be positioned closer to the ground floor rear windows at Neyland Court, and that's important to note because it's going to form part of the officer's recommended ground for refusal. So this is the existing boundary wall that's going to be demolished. That's a close-up photo. This is the communal garden serving the residents at Neyland Court. This is the existing block of garages. So that's the location where the previous application that was dismissed at appeal, the applicant was seeking to demolish that and erect a 2-storey building there. So this is the existing refuse store area, which isn't shown on the drawings, but officers have acknowledged that there is a refuse stores adjacent to the flank wall of the existing garage, which is what I showed you on the previous slide. So, and this is a photo of the adjoining office building at Pembroke House. Although an office management building was allowed at appeal, and one was granted planning permission subsequent to that appeal, this current building hasn't been built in accordance with the approved drawings and is currently under investigation by the Council's Enforcement Department. So I'm just going to flip back to the proposed site plan because I'm going to talk you through the recommended grounds for refusal. So in terms of resident consultation, the Council received 9 objections from residents, an objection from a ward councillor, an objection from Ruislip Residents Association, and a petition against the application with 24 signatories. These objections primarily concern the impact on neighbouring residential amenity and harm to the character and appearance of the area. The committee report states in section 6 that comments were received from East Coast Residents Association. The addendum that has been circulated to members clarifies that this has been noted in error, and the objection was received from Ruislip Residents Association. Please refer to the addendum for any additional comments that were received after the committee report was completed. So, as detailed in section 2 of the committee report, this application is recommended for refusal due to 4 reasons. In summary, these are: number 1, the proposed office management building, by virtue of its proximity, size, scale, bulk, mass and elevated height, would cause significant harm to the living conditions of the neighbouring occupiers and their associated external amenity space at Neyland Court, number 19 Pembroke Road, and numbers 4, 6 and 8 Brickwall Lane, which is located to the rear. In terms of loss of outlook, overshadowing, overbearing impact, sense of enclosure and perceived loss of privacy. Reasons for refusal number 2, the proposed boundary treatment comprising a brick wall, piers and metal railings by virtue of its proximity, length, 1.8 metre height and the sign could cause significant harm to the residential amenities of the existing occupiers of the ground floor flats at Neyland Court in terms of loss of outlook, overbearing impact and sense of enclosure. 3, the proposed development by virtue of its proximity of the on-site car parking spaces labelled 13 to 16. Let me just point those out. So, at the moment, there are cars being parked here, but as we saw in the photo, they're at an angle, and also the existing boundary wall screens those car parking spaces. But by introducing the new boundary treatment and having the car parking spaces parallel, they face directly onto the ground floor windows of the of Neyland Court. So we do have concerns about that, and that is a ground for refusal. So in terms of the inadequate provision of soft landscaping, screening would cause unacceptable noise, disturbance, overlooking and loss of privacy, both real and perceived, for the existing occupiers of the ground floor flats at Neyland Court. And the last ground for refusal is number 4, the proposed development by virtue of the proximity of the on-site car parking spaces labelled 13 to 16 and the inadequate provision of soft landscaping screening would severely undermine the quality, usability and functionality of the communal amenity space at Neyland Court. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nisha. That was very thorough. We have a petition, but you're present. I don't know, would you like to speak, or we got a written, so we go through the written. I was going to try and pronounce your name, but I dared. Oh, dared. Oh, right.
I'll go and...
So, they're going to sort the computer out, so I can have a go, but, you know, I don't know whether I'll probably get done for defamation, but because we've got 2 names, we've got Gossa and we've got Malgorazata. Is that good? Oh, see, not that bad then. I thought the surname is, I won't even go near that one. Yes, fine.
Okay,
so Steve will read out your response.
Okay, reading this on behalf of Gozia Paszkowska, lead petitioner and resident of Neyland Court. Thank you for this opportunity to address our objections. We wish to strongly object to this planning application for the following 3 reasons. The proposed building, due to its 5.6 metre height and very close proximity to the neighbouring dwellings and rear gardens, will affect the living conditions with particular regard to loss of light and outlook. The occupiers who will be most affected are 6, 6A and number 4 Brickwall Lane, and residents of Neyland Court. Policy DMHB 11 of the Hillingdon Local Plan requires, amongst other matters, that new developments incorporate the principles of good design and takes into account the effect on neighbouring open spaces and environment, and should not adversely impact on the amenity, daylight and sunlight of adjacent properties and open space. We would like to remind that the Secretary of State rejected the identical building on this site on the 15th of December 2021. The application suggests that the proposed office building will be in close proximity to the rear windows of Neyland Court. The south-facing, non-obscured windows of the proposed building will cause loss of privacy to the existing and future occupiers of Neyland Court. The planning application also proposes to add 1 extra parking space by reducing the existing amenity space and demolishing the existing bin store area for residents of Neyland Court. In our opinion, it would result in an unacceptable loss of privacy and increase in noise and disturbance for the ground floor flats at Neyland Court. It would also severely undermine the quality, usability, functionality of the communal amenity space at Neyland Court. Now I'd like to present a few pictures of the existing layout and illustrate how this planning application may harm the living conditions for residents of Neyland Court and neighbouring occupiers. In picture 1, this shows the existing site layout, including bungalows 6 and 6A at Brickwall Lane. In the background, it shows that both bungalows will be completely overshadowed. In picture 2, this picture shows the size, scale and bulk of the proposed new development. It will have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area. In picture 3, this shows the rear side of Neyland Court. The south-facing, non-obscured windows in the proposed building will cause loss of privacy to the existing and future occupiers of Neyland Court. In picture 4, this picture shows the existing view of the garden. Planning application proposes to downsize this already very narrow garden in order to accommodate one extra parking space. This will cause a loss of outlook and privacy and increase noise and pollution. In pictures 5 and 6, both pictures show the current location of the refuse store, which was omitted in the existing site layout. The planning application proposes to convert the bin store area into amenity space, which will not compensate for downsizing the garden. Finally, we would like to remind that the proposed application is for non-residential office building and is already the third office on this site. In our opinion, it is for no reason other than to try to convert such buildings to residential usage at a later date. This additional office building will only result in the area becoming more overcrowded. Also, we would like to mention that the applicant tends to submit their applications containing misstatements and omissions, and it is very difficult for us to consider or comment upon inaccurate plans. Having brought the above objections to your attention, we hope that the committee's decision will agree with the planning officer and refuse permission for this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was fantastic. Do we have the applicant agent? No, we don't have them present. Councillor Cawthorne, would you like to... It seems such a long time since I saw you. I think it was just 24 hours. Yes, exactly. So, if you'd like to take a seat, and when you're ready, we will give you your 3 minutes of glory.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I won't need them. The committee seems a bit lopsided this evening for some reason, but there we are.
I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Indeed. Chairman and committee members, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address you briefly this evening. I won't speak at length, but I note and welcome the offer recommendation. However, I would not want to make any assumptions about your determination on this item. Therefore, I did want to put in my two papers, as it were. I concur with the comments of Ms. Peskowska. I hope I got that right. One of several residents I've met recently discussed this application and the impact it would have on residential amenity, not just in Neyland Court, but elsewhere in Brickwall Lane. Her comments highlight this very well, I think, as well as the information missing from the site layout submitted by the applicant. I'm afraid I have a very long history of opposing applications on this site. I don't do it out of hand, I don't do it without good reason. But successive applications have one thing in common: they're all very much to the detriment of local residential amenity. And I'm pleased that the case officer has been able to draw upon the most recent appeal decision to give us something of a planning policy framework to refuse this sort of thing moving forward. So I'm pleased about that. I take issue slightly with the comment about the earlier appeal decision. It may be similar, but I think the citing of this particular proposal is entirely different and does make quite a difference. So in summary, I think this is very much at odds with our development plan policies in terms of adverse impact on amenity, height, bulk and overlooking of neighbouring dwellings in this residential area on the fringe of a conservation area, I would hasten to add. So I would respectfully urge you to support offer the recommendations, and I will leave you to your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cawthorne. It's very articulate there. I'm sure the committee... I don't think the committee have any questions for you, so you can you take us back to your seat. Right. Who wants to take me away? Oh, Councillor Tuckwell. I was looking over there wasn't anybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you for the presentation. I mean, again, If I'm right in saying, I think Councillor Cawthorne mentioned that this is on the fringe of a conservation area, isn't it? It's not actually in a conservation area. So I was kind of trying to sniff through if there was another refusal reason we could bolt on due to the sort of design of the building, but as it's outside of the conservation area, I think I know what the answer to that is. I think for me, I draw a lot of information from the appeal history, the recent appeal history, and it amazes me how applicants don't heed what their information they're given as a result of the appeal and just go with another planning application which clearly has not addressed any of the concerns raised with the appeal. So I can't see anything that would give me anything to want to, approve this item or not go with officer's recommendation. 4 very strong refusal reasons that have been very well explained this evening as well. And on that basis, I would like to move officer's recommendation to refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Brightman just got in front of you, Councillor Alana, but I don't know whether she'll give the floor.
Echo what Councillor Tuckwell has said. The development is going to cause a great deal of harm to these SWIC amenities, to the local amenities, and also due to the size and bulk and design, that is out of the local special character of the area. So I would like to second.
Thank you, Councillor Alana. Okay, Councillor Brightman, would you like to add? I'm sure. I know you're probably going to second. Yeah. Well, there we go. Well, long may they continue not to read their. It means we get more money in the coffers of the council. They keep putting planning permissions in. So, as long as we get the right answers for our residents, I don't really mind. Can I have a show of hands to all agree with officer's recommendation? That item is refused unanimously. I would like to say good evening to you all. That's the end of our committee today. And we got up to 21 viewers. So. And we are going off air now. There you go. Everybody can breathe out.